Welcome into episode 384 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, the Bruins enter the Christmas break with back-to-back wins over the Buffalo Sabres and Washington Capitals at home. Washington entered last night's game, tonight's game, but when people are listening, it'll be last night's game as the number one team in the NHL based off of winning percentage. I think they entered the game second in the NHL on points, first in the Eastern Conference. So a very impressive win over the Capitals after a win against Buffalo. That was, let's be honest, just 2 points.
Yeah. And, if you wanted to be cynical about it, you could say Capitals were playing second night of a back-to-back. They don't have Ovechkin, who's expected to come back right after Christmas break. But the Capitals have been playing great this whole time Ovechkin's been out. That has still been a really good team, winning games, scoring a lot of goals, good analytics. Just everything across the board has looked good. And look, yeah, I'm sure the back-to-back affected them to some extent, but it shouldn't be so much that that they only end up with 11 shots on goal. I mean, that's just a hell of a defensive effort from the Bruins. And, I know we're going to get more into it, but after two periods where not a whole lot was happening either way, Bruins really just took over in the third.
Yeah. And I think maybe this leads kind of well into Brian's opening shift, which is about the Coyle, Lindholm, and Marchand line, because they had a really dominant third.
Yeah, absolutely, Bridget. I mean, they combined for 6 points on the night, and it comes off the heels of Charlie Coyle scoring the opening goal against the Sabres, Brad Marchand getting the empty net to seal that win. So we talked last episode about how Coyle and Frederick went the entire Western road trip without registering a point. So Coyle gets moved up to that second line with Marchand and Lindholm, and not as much in the Buffalo game, but certainly in the game against the Capitals. Yeah, that line stepped up, and if the Bruins can get Charlie Coyle going, that's great. There's still a bit of an issue on that third line. Trent Frederick continues to struggle. Oliver Wahlstrom is, he's trying to find his way. And that third line, they're still trying to find that perfect mix if Charlie Coyle indeed continues to play in the top six. But as it pertains to the Capitals game, that line was great. Elias Lindholm with the go-ahead goal in the third, and he continues to build off of his game that has improved, starting really in that Western trip as well.
Yeah, and my opening shift has to do with just an overall shift in team morale. It started when the coaching change happened. Obviously that was kind of a kickstart to a different way of not even a different way of playing, but just a new beginning, I guess, where you could, write a different story than the first part of the season. And over the last 5 games, they've had points in all of those games. They did squander an overtime loss against the Oilers, but they've been racking up the points recently after starting out their Western road trip not so hot. They've bounced back, and Swayman talked about what the morale is like with the team right now, and I'll just quote it because I have it in front of me. He said, "I've never had a doubt in the room." And
was he? Let me guess. Was he just abundantly positive?
You know how he is.
Did he say they're special?
Yes, he did. I think you might have read my tweet about it, but he said, "I never had a doubt in this room, and it's really good to see us getting a little bit of success towards the break. I think we're all on the same page, and we've got something special here, and we're going to keep pushing." So, I mean, Swayman's kind of always a positive guy, and they've tried to keep their head up even during the struggles that they had in Montgomery being let go. But I think that they're actually in a pretty positive spot right now, and hopefully a little bit of rest, they can keep the momentum after this break, and there might be a player in particular that could use the rest.
Scott, can you elaborate on your sarcasm? What you don't think a wild card team in December is something special? What's going on here?
No, look, I actually am like very positive on this team right now. It's just Swayman's just funny to me. Like it's always the same quote. It's like it's always about like how special they are, and
Yeah.
whatever. I'm just having a little bit of fun.
No, I know. I
my-
picked up on
my-
that too.
My opening shift though is about the one big negative from Monday night's game, and that is that David Pastrnak left with an injury, an upper body injury, and did not return. And it wasn't really clear exactly what it was or even when it happened. I noticed on a shift early in the second period, and Andy Brickley pointed this out on the Nesson broadcast too, that Pastrnak like reacted to a hit in kind of like a weird way, and it wasn't even a big hit. He's skating through the neutral zone and really kind of just gets bumped by Tom Wilson, who, as we know, can do a lot of damage when he's trying to. In this case, Pastrnak saw it coming, pulled up. Wilson kind of pulled up, and it's just like a little bump, but Pastrnak sort of just stood there after, and then like did kind of like leaned over and like stretched, and like if you're watching on YouTube, it was like one of these like, you know, just kind of like lean, like stretch out your side a little. Clearly didn't look right. Went back to the bench. Was talking to a trainer. Did go out for 2 more shifts. He tried to play through it, but his final shift lasted just 23 seconds. He was kind of just gliding around, and then he went right down the tunnel to the room. So no update after the game. With them completely off for 3 days, we probably won't get an update until Friday. So yeah, as Bridget alluded to, like if it's something shorter term, not serious, then great time for a break. If it ends up being something longer term, then obviously, you know, we have something to talk about, because as much as this team has started to turn things around in a lot of areas, you know, they still have not been a great offensive team. And even with Pastrnak not playing fully up to his potential so far this year, he is their leading scorer in terms of points.
Yeah, I mean, the only update that we got was that it was an upper body injury, which we were discussing a little bit before the podcast, that his off-season injuries were, well, his off-season injury was a groin injury, and that's a lower body injury. So is it something different?
We think it was something like that.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think it was ever confirmed.
Yeah, so, but it was confirmed to be a lower body injury. So yeah, like, is this a different injury? It sounds like it is, or is this new? I don't think it happened today completely. Like, it seemed like something was going on with him, and then maybe this pushed it over the edge. But obviously we don't have that information, and we probably never will have a lot of details on it. But yeah, I mean, maybe this break over Christmas gives him time to rest, and he's back, doesn't miss any time. That's just something we're gonna have to wait and see.
Well, why don't we stay with this to start the podcast today? And I'll just ask you this question: how concerned should Bruins fans be, and should the Bruins be, about his health in general? Because obviously this Bruins roster isn't the Stanley Cup contender that others are in the league. But even if they were, whether this roster has holes or not, if David Pastrnak is not being who he can be, and obviously health is a big factor in that, then there's a significant challenge for this team to get where they want to go. So like we've talked about, nothing from this game appeared to be a major cause. It looks like, I mean, Scott, you called it, not much of a hit. You called it a bump. I mean, even a bump. It's almost like both guys kind of held up. Like, it was pretty much as close to a non-contact as you could get without, not actually making contact. And so that just tells you that, he's been dealing with something. And the way he's, fumbles the puck a lot this year, that's not David Pastrnak. I mean, he usually has the puck on a string. Obviously, throughout his career, he's prone to turnovers due to the volume that the puck's on his stick. But turnovers is not necessarily a result of mishandling the puck. It's bad decision making sometimes. He's always been an amazing puck handler, and he's had a lot of trouble this year. So I'm wondering a lot of what you guys have touched on, which is maybe he's just been dealing with lingering injuries, one or multiple. And if that's the case, like, this is concerning. And it's frustrating that you enter a season already injured. But again, he did play in the World Championships, and maybe that had something to do with it. But it's definitely it's cause for concern, in my opinion, if this is something that's going to be a lingering thing. Lingering injuries can be a bitch.
Yeah, because lingering injury, it's like, yeah, he'll probably play through it, but you're not going to get anything close to 100% or even 90% or even like 80%, which, again, like a 70% David Pastrnak is still a damn good hockey player who's probably going to average about a point per game. And that may very well be your top scorer still. But the way this team is built, you need like David Pastrnak at 100+ point pace like he has been the last 2 years. And obviously he hasn't been at that level so far this season. And if there's anything that's going to linger like the rest of the year, there's a decent chance you're not going to get that, which would, be a real bummer for this team. So, I guess like if you want to flip it to looking for any sort of silver lining, maybe it's, okay, you get a few days here, kind of reassess it, right? He really hasn't had any built-in breaks on the schedule yet. And if he needs, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, to get right, give him that. Like that serves you better in the long run. But that's obviously, that only really works if however long that time is going to be actually gets him right. Like you just have to hope that he's not dealing with something where it's like, well, he's going to be able to play through it, but, it's going to require surgery after the season, and he's just going to have to deal with it. And it's like, that sucks, because you just know you're not going to get Pastrnak at his peak.
Yeah, I mean, you see that like Coyle played with an injury for a season and then had to have knee surgery, and since then, like when he came back from that, was playing more like himself. And then you think back to Bergeron and Krejci in their last playoffs, like coming back and playing at like 70% of what they were because they tried to play through an injury that
yeah, I think they were both at even less than that. They were very banged up.
70% just because
yeah.
But Scott, you mentioned this to me on the 9th floor last game against Buffalo. You were like, this might be Pasta's worst game that I've seen him play. And then he still ends up with 2 points. And Scott said to me, I guess when you're as good as Pasta, you can still have, if you decide to play for 2 shifts, if you only take, 2 shifts a game that are at that quality, at that normal Pasta quality, you'll end up with 2 points again. So,
well, yeah. at least against the Sabres.
Against the Sabres.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe wouldn't fly against a team like the Capitals. It certainly wasn't flying against Winnipeg. But yeah, it seems like last game, me and Scott were watching from the 9th floor going, something doesn't look right. He looked disoriented, would be the way that I would describe it. And that's very common for him, somebody with the track record that he has of his pedigree and his skill set. So it feels like this has been something that's maybe compounded.
Well, I guess the flip side to this, guys, is that every player for the most part is going to deal with something throughout the course of the season. I mean, very seldom do players get to the postseason and in April or 100%. And if they are, they won't be for long. So as it pertains to, I mean, obviously you want to be as healthy as possible, but injuries is it's just the reality of the NHL and the density of the schedule. But yeah, it just seems like I don't know. It's too early in the year for your best player to be ailing like this. But at the same time, we don't know exactly what it is, and it could be something minor. I mean, he was asked point blank, maybe like about a month and a half ago, about if he was dealing with something, and Scott, it may have been you who asked or Bridget, but he said he was feeling 100%. Now, maybe he was lying, maybe he wasn't, and it's something new that's popped up. But I will say it's better to err on the side of caution here. Like I think to give him some extra. So you have 3 days of rest, and if you have to sit him for a couple of days and put him on the shelf until after the new year, I mean, 2 or 3 games. Yeah, he's your best player. He's your best offensive player, but maybe it gives other guys an opportunity to step up and find their game in the meantime, and maybe him getting healthier is better long term, like you mentioned, Scott.
Scott, want to quote what Marchand's assessment was after the game?
Yeah, so a reporter asked Brad Marchand if he saw Pasta after the game and how he looked, and Marchand said he looked great naked. I saw him in the shower. Want me to keep going?
He's a yeah. Marchand's got some clips there this year so far.
Yeah, I've got to I think I was the first one to tweet that video, and I've gotten to go viral tonight as a result. So
well, you knew as soon as you heard it, right? Like I literally, we were still in the locker room. I go, Scott, please post that right away, because I was like, just that clip, and it turned the whole like post game interview super awkward. So I didn't get asked my question because everyone was looking at each other like, all right, we're talking about, I mean, he was lighthearted about it. I don't know if that's a good sign or if that's
I was just going to say, like, look, like maybe it means absolutely nothing. But I guess like I do kind of think if anyone had like an idea that like, wow, we're going to be without Pastrnak for 2 months, I don't know that like Marchand's joking about it like that. But maybe that's, reading a little too deep. I don't know.
And also, Marchand sometimes can't help himself when he hears something. He
that
says
too.
the first thing that comes to mind. And that was what his brain came up with immediately. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it was pretty funny. But that probably wraps up the pasta conversation. Actually, you know what? I'll add one more thing to it, and this might transition us into Brian's opening shift, and just in general about some guys that are playing better. I don't know if posthumous time, like Morgan Geeky has been doing well recently. Like I don't know if you can attribute it completely to playing on that line because he's had some success on the power play, but him with Zacha and Pastrnak, he's been playing his best hockey. He's been looking better. He's been scoring more. He scored 2 against Buffalo. 1 got called back because Pasta was offside. But what changes in the lineup? Like, I feel bad because Geeky's finally kind of seems like he's benefiting from being with 2 really good playmakers, and he's gotten going because of it. So I don't know how that changes the top 6 dynamic. Obviously, you're losing your best skilled forward, but just thinking about it in terms of how it affects some of the other guys.
Well, I will say I thought Geeky was really good Monday, even after Pastrnak left the game. I thought he kept making an impact. He had a couple good chances. He had some disruptive hits on the forecheck. Now, the guy that they gave the first look to in that spot, Oliver Wahlstrom, and he made it until a whole 10 seconds into the third period before he got ejected for boarding Martin Fehervary.
Stupid check. Stupid.
Yeah, it wasn't like the most blatantly dirty hit, but you just It wasn't really a hit from behind. It was like a shove, but you just can't do it at that distance from the boards. Like
That's why it's
it's
stupid.
a dangerous spot.
It's the worst possible spot, and it looked really bad for a second. And Ferravari's he went face first into the boards, and his visor chopped his nose, and like he had to get looked at by a trainer. And those are the kind of hits that I think guys at this level should know not to engage in those situations. But like you said, Scott, he didn't end up. So the top power play unit got changed multiple times because first it misses Pasta, and then Wahlstrom plays on it for one power play, and then Geeky comes in getting rewarded for playing really well. And he still, he looked good again. And the Bruins power play scored with the second unit. Brazeau tipped in a goal. That was the first Bruins goal. And I mean, I think the second unit has looked pretty good recently. I don't know if I'd say the same thing about the first unit or like consistently the power play being, looking good, but I don't know. Brazeau now is tied for the team lead in power play goals with 4 with Pastrnak. So he's doing something right.
Yeah, definitely. Like again, he's getting chances right at the net front. This one on Monday, rebound put back off a Geeky shot. So, yeah, and really, like after Pastrnak went out of the game, the next power play, Sacco it was coming out of a TV timeout, so Sacco had his choice of unit, and he started with the second unit. The quote unquote second unit because they had just scored and the first unit didn't have Pastrnak. So, yeah, maybe see a little bit more of like an even split if Pastrnak misses any more time.
Yeah, because Geeky scored with the second unit against Buffalo, so it's 2 games in a row that the second unit scored a power play goal.
I also just love the shot mentality there by Geeky to just attack the net and just do the curl and drag snapshot. It's not my first time mentioning it this year, but I'm a fan of forwards, attacking the net on their strong side. It's just you're more versatile as a shooter, I think, and yeah, you put the puck at the net and good things happen, especially when you have a guy that's what's Brazeau 6'5", 6'6", like he's tough to move around there, and he's got that long reach. Yeah,
I think him and Zadorov are the same height, but they both tower over me, so it's all the same to me. I'm at least a foot shorter than both of them. So, but yeah, I think we've actually been we've been talking to guys more about Geeky because of this stretch that he's been playing well. We talked to Geeky as well against Buffalo or after Buffalo, and I feel like we're still learning about him in a way because we know that he had good stretches last season, but I think there's a lot of respect that some of the other guys on the team have mentioned about his shot and especially his shot from distance, and being one of the guys who's more successful at that in the league, because when he tees off those slap shots from like high slot, which is where he scored his power play goal from the other day, like you can see he gets a lot of pace on it. He has some pretty good range with his shot, but also on that line, he's been the guy tasked with going to the net when he's with Pasta and Zacha. So he's been getting more attention, more from his teammates, at least, like acknowledging some of the good things that he can do for the team.
Yeah, and against Buffalo, it was really noticeable his play without the puck and his ability to move and make things happen when the puck's not on his stick and get open and pressure oppositions, pressure their D-men. Like last year, if I could say nothing else about Morgan Geeky, I would say he worked hard. And I think that's what led to a lot of his success at times. And the first month and a half of this season, whether it was training camp, practices, games, he just, he just looked like he was a cone out there. He just wasn't engaged. He wasn't really making things happen with and without the puck on his stick. And I don't care who you are, whether you're Connor McDavid or if you're Morgan Geeky or anybody in between. Like, no matter how much skill you have, you have to be able to move your feet without the puck and make things happen. It's the biggest reason why I see Trent Frederick struggling a lot. Like, there are certain players that have enough skill to get away with it more than others. Like, Bridget, I think you mentioned earlier, like David Pastrnak, like he can go a whole game doing nothing, but he has that elite talent to make things happen, at the drop of a hat. Somebody like Morgan Geeky and Trent Frederick, they need the other elements to be there to create their opportunities. And I just think that what we've seen out of Morgan Geeky in the last couple of weeks, I would say, has been a hell of a lot more like the player that we saw last year, that's moving his feet, getting in the forecheck, finishing his body checks, going to the net, and playing that sandpaper style. When you play that way, then you get opportunities to show the world, oh wait, he's actually got a pretty good release too. And that you have to do the little things and able to showcase what you can do when you get opportunities.
He had a bad play Monday night that he wound up turning into like at least a neutral play where he was coming out of the defensive zone and he was trying to hit Pastrnak on a stretch pass. So he's like waiting for it to open up, and the bad play was he wasn't moving his feet enough and he got caught from behind. And usually when that happens, it's immediately turning back up ice. Capitals have an odd man rush, and Geeky's probably just hoping that his defenseman or goalie steps up. And instead, like, as soon as Geeky gets his pocket picked, you see him just like bolt, right back to the guy who takes the puck and is like fighting and forces a tie up. No rush for the Capitals. I think the Bruins even ended up coming away with possession off the tie up. And it was like, again, like even after first making a bad play, just like the work that he put in to prevent it from turning into a disaster. It's like so many guys, like that play happens and, they throw their head back or kind of glide around, bang their stick or whatever. And Geeky, it was like you could almost like sense in his head. It was like, oh hell no, like I'm not having this happen to me. Like, and like even just that was kind of like impressive to see, and just sort of he just looks so confident right now, which I think is you see that reflected in how often he's shooting and just willing to throw pucks on and taking shots with purpose. Like these aren't just like, oh, flinging at the net and hope something happens. Like he's shooting hard, and that's where that all those guys praising his shots, like that's where you see it, because I think him and Zaka are like a little similar in the sense that they do have like good releases and hard shots. They're not the most accurate all the time. And that's where I think they, I think that's what prevents them from being like the next level of like, that's what's going to stop them from being 30 goal scorers. But, you can score 20 with a good release and a hard shot. And they both have that, and Geeky's using his right now.
Well, Andy Brickley says all the time on the broadcast that it's a second and third effort league. And that is, to me, the most accurate assessment of any NHL player's success or NHL team success. The teams that top to bottom throughout their roster implement a style of play that's based on second and third effort. Those are the teams that are last standing at the end of the season. Those are always the last four teams standing, the last two teams and the last team standing. And because you can sit there and you can compare and contrast rosters in the NHL and say, this roster has a little bit more talent than that one. And that's true. But by and large, these guys are all, the best in the world at what they do. They're a select group of individuals. So they all have enough talent and skill to be there and execute. But when you're going up against individuals that have, the same skill set as you or better, you have to rely on second and third efforts. Who is willing to do more? And again, there's no secret to success. It's hard work. And Yeah, I just think at times like the Bruins, they've historically been a hardworking team. I think at times they're inconsistent with that, and this group is no different. But right now we're seeing a team that's buying into that a little bit more. And again, there's no secret to success here.
Well, and that was what was, I guess, what made them so successful on that 5-minute penalty kill. Like, I watched multiple guys put in second and third efforts on that PK to get pucks out, to block shots and then recover pucks. And I want to point out, like, Nikita Zadorov did a really good job on that 5-minute penalty kill. There was a point where the Bruins actually had a shorthanded chance, and he was joining the rush, and then all of a sudden the puck's coming back the other way, and he's not known as one of the fastest guys in the league, but he got back fast enough to slow down the player who had the puck. I can't remember who it was, but it was going to be a 2-on-1 the other way, and he gets back and slows the play down, and that was a good play by him. He also had a shot on the 5-minute penalty kill, and I noticed him doing a lot of little things right, and so like those efforts were really good to see. And he's meshing a little bit more, and then you see Elias Lindholm having the success he's had over the last 4 games. That he's got 3 goals in the last 4 games, and I don't know if people like know this or not, or we're like, but Lindholm is third on the team for the Bruins in points. He's got 18 points now. So even though people have said he's had a quiet season, like he has also quietly impacted games, and has a lot of assists. He's still yet to get a lot of goals. I think he only has 5, but he's got 18 points, and he's starting to make a bigger difference. And we talked to him after the game too, and he said that he felt the like a turning point for him was the end of that Western road trip, playing against his old team. When he was playing against Calgary, you could see him spark, and yeah, he's taken that, and which is something that we brought up at the time, like, can he play like that when they're at home, like not just against his old team? And he's continued to do that. He's been playing well.
Yeah, and I think you definitely see his chemistry with Marchand growing. That has become a good combination for the Bruins. Obviously, Marchand is just on fire right now. 10-game point streak. He's the oldest Bruin in history to have a 10-game point streak. So like I think he's driving the bus, but Lindholm is doing his part as well. And I think you see those guys like starting to kind of feel where each other's going to be and connecting more on plays. Whereas, I think back to like early in the season where there are times where you could like see Lindholm trying things that he thought was going to work or was supposed to work, or his teammate was supposed to be in a certain spot and they just weren't there. Like I think in particular about, he was a play where he was like the first forward up at the offensive blue line and immediately sent a pass that was like supposed to connect with a teammate coming through the neutral zone speed, and there was just no one there. And it's like, yeah, that's clearly like just a complete lack of chemistry and lack of feel for where your teammate is. And now I think you're seeing him learn. Like he's learning Marchand's tendencies, the rest of his teammates' tendencies. The Bruins as a whole are just playing more cohesively. Montgomery used to talk about it, and Sakos talked about it too, like being predictable to your teammates. Like that just isn't a process that happens right away. And you wish it was, and you wish Lindholm didn't miss a week and a half of training camp, and maybe it would have come sooner, but it took a while, but you're seeing more of it now.
And you hope that Pasta is fine and that chemistry doesn't. I mean, he's not on the same line as Pasta anymore, but like, you hope Pasta's fine and your top 6 stays clicking. It was mostly that Marchand, Lindholm, and Coyle line, and I feel like I don't want to like pass over Coyle either, because I think he's a player that works hard, and I think that he's been a good fit with that line. And maybe there is a little bit of like kind of understanding Lindholm that he's been able to do, and that like I feel like for some reason those two kind of started to understand each other pretty much right away when they were put on the same line. And I wanted to bring this up, though it might mean nothing at all, but I noticed on the broadcast that Charlie Coyle's left wrist was like taped up. Because for some reason they were showing him on the bench, he had his glove off and you could see the tape job that was there. I hadn't noticed that before. Some guys just tape their wrists. Scott was telling me, I guess Morgan Geeky tapes both wrists just for stability reasons. But that's just something I saw. And obviously he hasn't been taking face-offs because he's been playing wing. He's taken a few, but even when he was playing on third line center, he was starting to really not take that many, and moving him to wing has allowed him to not have to on that line. But I don't know if there's something going on with his left wrist or if that's just something that he does always. But
Yeah, there could be something there for sure. Just a couple of quick notes. First of all, just one thing on David Pastrnak. Without looking it up, and if you know off the top of your head, then obviously just omit yourself from the answer. Do you guys know where he ranks currently in the league in goal scoring as we approach the new year? So, I mean, we're over 30 games into the season here.
You mean like what number out of the league? Like,
yeah. So I haven't looked at this in a while. I remember checking it. This might have been like a month ago, and he was definitely outside the top 50. I'm gonna guess 61st.
Oh, Scott, you are very close. He is 62nd in the league in goals scored. Now that's just
he was really looking at it this whole time.
That is
and
an
he just
asinine guess.
No, I wasn't. But I feel like his pace hasn't changed that much. And I think when I looked it up, I'm like, again, this spread 3-4 weeks ago, it was like right around there. So,
I mean, that's just again, we are not there. There can be some funky stats a month into the season, right? Sometimes you'll see Connor McDavid like 50th in scoring because he's off to a slow. We're almost 3 months into the season approaching, and obviously David Pastrnak, he's been a top 5 scorer in the league 3 times in the last 5 seasons. He's one of the best goal scorers in the world when he's on his game. So clearly that stat is pretty telling for how snake bitten he's been. And also just, I know he's been one of the league leaders in shots on goal, but I mean, I guess there's something to be taken away from that, but he just hasn't seemed very confident this year.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, the reason I looked it up, when I did, was because I was also looking at shooting percentage, which is way below his career average. He has a career worst shooting percentage by a good margin right now. And at the time I looked it up, I would have to do the math again. If he were shooting his career average of this year, which I think is like 13.7%, he would be like 5th or 6th in the league in goals. So there is an element of like he's getting looks and just not burying them the way that he usually does. But I also think part of that, like, again, we're talking about how he hasn't seemed right all year. I would also say like his shot hasn't seemed right all year. Like there's a difference between Pastrnak when he's on his game, his shot always looks lethal. And this year I feel like you're seeing a lot of shots where it almost looks like he's like shooting for a rebound, which sometimes is the exact right play. But you don't see him like, you really don't see him like sniping the way that we're used to seeing from him. Like very rare. I feel like I can count, I wouldn't even need a whole hand to count the number of times this year where he scored one of those goals where you're like, wow, what a shot. Like he had one on a completely meaningless power play like a week and a half ago or whatever, blatant a blowout. But like, that's one of the few that comes to mind.
The Calgary overtime goal was a nice shot across the green.
That's true. Yeah.
But let me choose an arbitrary number here to make it a little bit tougher to decide. Over under on his goal total this year at season's end, Bridget and Scott, 33 goals over under. I was gonna do 35. I think 30 he'll be over. So I just make it interesting. We'll go 33.
Yeah, I'll still go over.
Okay.
Again, with the assumption that like he's not about to miss 2 months with an injury.
Right.
Like,
right.
Assuming he's playing in the next week or so, I'll still go over because I still think he's going to get really hot at some point.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I lean towards over as well, but with the stipulation that this isn't like a serious injury that keeps him out,
Right.
which I think is probably assumed in your question anyway, because
Yeah,
an
yeah.
unhealthy player totally changes that trajectory of all the stats. So yeah, I say over.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, he's a perennial 40-goal scorer at the lowest end. So for him to crack 40 this year, he's gonna have to get really hot a couple different times. I guess right now, if I had to guess, I'd peg him around 35, just because again, we're approaching January, so it's there's not, you have a little bit over half the season, so there's plenty of time. But speaking of confidence, because Bridget, you mentioned Lindholm, isn't it funny what confidence can do? 3 goals in his first 32 games, 3 goals in his last 4.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he has 6 goals total. I think I said 5 earlier. He had 5 coming into the game, but yeah, 6 now. Also, like, you see like a little extra fire in his stride and in like his emotion during the game, and I think you start to see the belief in himself come back, and the belief that like he can be an effective and good teammate on that line, which is a big part of being able to make plays without hesitating and just feel comfortable in your position. And yeah, he's been much better. It's been pretty noticeable, his impact on games, and now you see, like, his goal pace still isn't great, but him and Marchand have started to work really well together. So if he's just, setting up Marchand, that's big, because as long as someone's scoring on that line, and as long as plays are being made, it doesn't really matter how many goals he has if he's still putting up plenty of assists and just helping lift the numbers of that top 6.
Yeah, and like he has some physicality to his game, and I think we saw it like very early on this season, where like I actually would see comments from people that like, oh, like, didn't watch him a ton because he was always out west. Like, I didn't know he had that in his game. And then it felt like as the offensive struggles continued, like I think that affected his whole game, and like some of that kind of went away, where it's like everything started to kind of go down a little. But now that, as you guys said, like now that he's feeling it again and feeling better about his game, feeling better about his offense, all of it, like now that physicality is there again. And not to say that he's like, like he's not Mark Kastelik out there, like he's not that kind of physical, but like he can play the body, he can move guys around, and he can win battles, and that, like, you're seeing that quite a bit now.
Bridget and Scott, I have a league question that kind of pertains to the Bruins, but before I go to that, I want to give everybody an opportunity to close up some loose ends here from these last 2 games. Jeremy Swayman, I mean, 10 saves on 11 shots. Clearly, look, the Capitals played at 5:00 yesterday, so they're on the second half of a back-to-back. Clearly you didn't get their best tonight. Like I said off the top, they're on points percentage. They're the best team in the NHL so far this season heading into the game. They looked like a team that, is probably just limping a bit into the holiday break here. Like I said, on a back-to-back. So they didn't have their best volume of shot output.
No,
still,
and
I mean,
you have a 5-minute
Swayman,
power play, and you have a
right.
5-minute power play, and you finish the game with 11 shots. It's like, how did that happen? Like, you're generating like 6-7 shots on a 5-minute power play, and I think they had maybe one, but maybe none that went on goal. So it did not help them. In fact, the Bruins, I think, gained momentum from that kill. And the crowd really got into it after that.
Yeah, the crowd was loving that. Like, that was obviously got louder with the goals that came after, but like at the moment, that was the loudest they got all night. Was kind of like the last minute or so of that penalty kill.
That was also almost like maybe the loudest they've been all year, because the Bruins, the first half of the season, were not a good home team. Now they're winning more at home. Like they were getting booed at home. This might have been the loudest that they've been, and the crowd understanding that like this is a good opponent, and you're doing this against a really good opponent.
Yeah, on Swayman, like obviously it wasn't tested a ton. I did think he had a few high danger saves. The Capitals again didn't get a lot of pucks to net, but I did think they had some real quality scoring chances, and the one goal was an absolute rocket into the top corner that he wasn't going to do anything about. So sort of related, like the one thing we haven't really gone deep into that just I know I've highlighted on a couple episodes recently, but like this team's defense is becoming pretty legit. Like the Capitals are a top 3 offense in the league, and you just held them to their worst showing of the season. 11 shots on goal. So Ty Anderson had. I was gonna look it up at some point tonight or tomorrow, but he had it. It was the fewest shots the Bruins have allowed in a game since 1993. Like,
wow.
I wasn't even born then.
Best defensive effort in 31 years in terms of shots allowed. And that comes, 2 games after you held the Oilers, another top offense, one of the top 2 offenses, to one of their worst showings of the season in terms of shots and high danger chances. So, like, I know there's obviously been some stinkers along the way here, and it hasn't always been consistently great, but like, if you're not feeling a hell of a lot better about this defense after these recent games, like, I don't know what you're watching. And it's kind of crazy. It's like I will still hear people on radio, and I'm not going to mention anyone by name, say like, yeah, Swayman struggled, but like the defense isn't good in front of him. And I'm like, dude, like, are you still living on like in like October? Because
yes,
it's like that is not the case right now. Like that is not where this team is anymore.
Well, people don't pay. Hockey's like the 4th thing on people's list in talk radio to pay attention to. So yeah, they're probably just referring to something that either they heard one of their buddies say, or it's
it's funny. Like it takes people. It takes some people like a long time to catch up to things changing. Like on kind of the same lines. I had someone tweet at me today, Monday, after morning skate, that Morgan Geeky should be a healthy scratch. And I'm like, you just straight up haven't been watching for like 3 weeks if you think that should be in play.
Yeah, exactly. Like it is. It takes people longer to catch up. And like, if you watched any of the last 5 games, then you would know, like, he's one of the positives over that stretch, and he's been good on the Bruins 5-game point streak. But before we go to the league thing, Brian, just because this is what I wrote about this published this morning, it was about potentially like helping Swayman's workload by mixing Korpisalo in more, because he had a good game against Buffalo, which we didn't record after because we had today marked down, but like, I think it makes sense to bring Korpisalo in more. And in the article, I made like a little chart of all of Swayman's 3rd starts, and they've all like, he has not won a 3rd start in a row this year. And so there's like diminishing returns on his starts. And I'm not trying to say like he shouldn't be getting a majority of starts, but like, sometimes when the workload starts to add up, it seems like things have gotten bad, and maybe it's just the timing of games. But like the Winnipeg game was a 3rd start in a row for him, and it was his worst game of the year probably. He gave up the most goals in a game that he ever has in his career, and Korpisalo has proven that he can take a little bit more leash, right, than maybe we thought he could. Maybe reward him. Maybe you do 2 nights, 1 night, to Swayman, then a Korpisalo. Like, and as we hit more back-to-backs coming up, naturally they'll mix him in more. But I still think it's worth talking about because Swayman's always been in a rotation, and obviously him and every other goalie will tell you they want to play every night. But his success came in a more even rotation, and maybe that's what it takes to get him playing more consistently, whether it's the rest, whether it's time to really focus on some of the little details in his game with goalie Bob and get right. And like remember when he had the quote about him and goalie
being
Bob
a special team. Sorry.
Having like their own mini training camp.
Yeah.
Like he said that because he had a little bit of time to work on stuff. Like that's what he meant.
Right.
So give him a little bit of extra time. And it's not even like supposed to be like an insult in any way, but I just think that success there might be more success for him and the team if he gets maybe 2 in a row and then Korpisalo comes in. Now maybe Korpisalo turns my opinion around by coming in and not playing well, but so far, going off what he's looked like in Boston, rather than talking about what he looked like last year in Ottawa, like he's seems to be able to hold up his end of the bargain.
Well, that's all you can go off of is what you've seen so far this year, and you did a great job on that article, Bridget. And I'm glad you bring up the Buffalo game because Korpisalo absolutely had he didn't have a good game. He had a great game against Buffalo, and there's a reason why I posed the Jeremy Swayman conversation the way that I did tonight, because he only had 11 shots, 10 saves, and that's great. You know, for the most part, he stopped the shots in front of him, but it kind of follows a trend that Scott mentioned last episode, which was people saying Swayman's been turning his game around, and the reality is the Bruins have been turning their defense around in front of him, and he hasn't been getting challenged too frequently in his starts, but yet Korpisalo seems to be getting more volumes of shots in his games. So, you know, the more impressive goaltending performance of the last 2 games went to Joonas Korpisalo. So, Bridget, I think what you wrote about and what you're posing is a good idea. And again, Ullmark and Swayman, they were going every other for the most part, right? So even if you go 2 for Swayman, 1 for Korpisalo, that's still more than, you know, the Ullmark split, but it's more regimented and it's just a little bit more balanced, I think. And I do think Korpisalo has earned it. In
my article too, I mentioned like I looked at the split last year with Ullmark, and the only times that one time in the regular season that he played more than 2 games in a row was when Ullmark was hurt. And then in the playoffs, because they decided to ride Swayman in the playoffs. So, but like during the regular season, it was just back and forth, like except for during injury.
Yeah, I feel like I've been on this train for like 2 months now. Like, I just don't see what's wrong with the 2-1-2, 1-2-1. Like, I don't know why they keep trying to give Swayman 3 or 4 in a row when he's
trying to get their money's worth.
Yeah, like when he's really not earning it. And, you know, yeah, at some point he's going to have to start more games in a row. But I think I said in the last pod, like he showed last year that he didn't need to start a bunch of games in a row to be ready for the playoffs, to be ready for a playoff run. And in fact, him being rested may have helped him go on that run in the playoffs. So, yeah, like I don't know. I'm not trying to overwork him. And if he's not, you know, if he's not holding up under the workload of like 3 or 4 straight starts, then, and you have another goalie who's playing well, and Korpisalo straight up has just been a better goalie than Swayman this season. Like, yeah, I don't really get it. Like, I don't really get trying to force feed Swayman starts when to me, there's no harm in evening it out a little bit more.
Yeah, and think about it this way, like, and I know the contract is what gets people hung up on this, and it's a fair thing to bring up, to factor in, but he has been going 1-1-1-1 like for a while with Ullmark as the duo. Maybe it's okay to just ramp up to 3 starts in a row. You know what I mean? Like, okay, as he starts to take over the number one role, like maybe they should have been giving him 2, like before they started working it up to 3 and then 4. Like, I know that, and this is a completely fair criticism to say, well, he's a professional goalie. He's getting paid so much money. He's getting paid to start that many games. That's why the contract is what it is. But like, hypothetically, or not even hypothetically, like maybe the right way to have approached it would have been to incrementally increase the workload rather than just do it like, bam, like you're going to get 56 starts this year. We're going to spread it. Like we're going to start giving you 3 and 4 in a row right away.
They gave him 3 straight starts right out of the gate after missing all the training camp. Like it was kind of crazy to me from the start. And I don't know. Yeah, I would be giving Korpisalo a little bit more. Like I've also said this, and I believe it is like, get Korpisalo in once a week. To me, there's been too many stretches this year where he's going 10, 11 days between stars. And to his credit, he's still coming in and playing well. But it's like, I don't know. You average 3 games a week. If 2 are Swayman and 1's Korpisalo, that just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. I think it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, you want to keep Korpisalo fresh and on his game. And to his credit, like you said, Scott, he's been there even when he's like, even on that, the end of that time that Swayman had 4 starts in a row, he was ready to go. So good on him for that. But like, he can handle more games. Like he was in net so much for Ottawa last year, and you can say his stats weren't great. That's true, but stats are better here. And going off of what he's done so far, like he's just handling it, right? Like, and he can probably handle a little bit more. And we used to talk about this all the time with the Allmark Swayman tandem, and we would argue with Razor on Sunday Skate about like how much it helps the guys having rest and like to go back and forth. And that's what part of the argument was when we were saying, oh, run the goalie duo in the playoffs. Was like, okay, it's worked so far and they keep each other fresh. Like there's still something to keeping the workload from wearing somebody down for sure. Like, as obviously they're not in the realm of doing that this year, but it still helps like wear and tear.
I mean, even if Swayman was playing lights out this year, I still think it would be a smart strategy to, give Korpisalo a start every week. Okay, quickly, I know it's late, but I want to get to this because we're not going to be talking for a little bit here. There is some league drama, and I wonder if there's potential Bruins implications here if they were to see the opportunity. And I'm talking about Chris Kreider getting healthy scratched in New York with the Rangers. Trouba's been traded. Kakko's been traded. They're trying to trade Kreider. He was mentioned on a league memo to other GMs. Like, this is not going well with the Rangers. They're in a tailspin. So I think it's fairly obvious that Chris Kreider will not end the season with the New York Rangers. Okay, let's put that off to the side. For the record, he has a modified no movement clause or no trade clause. He has a 15-team no trade list, I think. So
I doubt he wants to play there anymore. Like,
I don't think so.
And I can guarantee you that the Bruins are not one of the teams he's blocking.
It would be a no issue for him to go to Boston if he wanted to. Like, Boston's a team he would go to. Okay, put that to the side. Across the continent to Vancouver, BC, JT Miller and Elias Pettersson have this just big animosity between them. Apparently, it's been going on for some years now. But up in Vancouver, they're answering questions about it. Quinn Hughes, Rick Tocchet, JT Miller, Elias Pettersson have all had to answer about this saga. And it just seems like they don't even want to play in the same power play unit. Like, it's getting to the point where sometimes you have teammates that don't get along, but they respect each other. They can make do. But if you have such a bad relationship with a teammate that you don't even want to be on the ice with them at the same time, and you're one of the best players and he's one of the best players, something's probably got to give for the betterment of the team. I don't think Vancouver wants to trade Elias Pettersson due to his age, his youth compared to JT Miller. Okay.
Well, and they just gave him a huge contract extension.
Right. But Miller's also like locked up there for a little bit too. JT Miller has a no move clause. He would have to approve anything that happens with him. So I think that there's probably something that's going to happen in Vancouver at some point. JT Miller would obviously be, a number one center in Boston. He's a over point per game guy in the league, skates his ass off, might be a bit of a head case at times, but he's a legit number one center in this league. Chris Kreider would be a good top six winger. Obviously, you're not getting both of them. But what do you guys make of those two storylines? And is there any world where you could see the Bruins being in on one of these guys if there is movement with one of them or both?
Can I just ask first, have you guys ever hated one of your teammates that much that you wouldn't even want to be on the same line as them?
Every single podcast, Bridget.
I hope you talk about Brian. I gave you a nice gift today, so do you have it? Here it is. It is a Scott's Pops ornament. It's beautiful. It took me 45 minutes to make because the letters. It looks beautiful, Scott. And Brian.
There's quite a bit of glare, but you get the idea.
Yeah, Brian, there'll be one for you coming. There'll be one on my tree as well. If I could mass produce them, I would send them to, our pod fans, but the production line is really slow over here. But no, for real, I've never hated a teammate that much. I've had teams I thought were annoying, but not that I wouldn't even want it. I don't know, it's kind of unacceptable. So what
I played on a team in, is it the Squirts or Pee Wees? I forget, but there was one kid on the team was like an actual bully and had kind of 2 or 3 close friends that joined in with them, and that created issues. And so I definitely didn't like him, but also I was 11. And these guys are in the NHL. So.
Yeah, are there NHL bullies like that? I mean, it has to be really personal. I don't even want to think of what it could have been. That's really pretty bad. And maybe among female athletes, it's much less likely to have a teammate that you hate that much. But I don't know. That's crazy. And maybe for that reason, people are wary to touch either of them. But I'm sure they're when they're calling, they're saying, "Hey, I'm gonna need to know the backstory on this." And
I was gonna say, if you're the Bruins, though, you definitely have to at least be doing your homework and checking in, because what do we talk about all the time is kind of the biggest thing hanging over this team moving forward is, where do you find a true number one center? It would be great if Elias Lindholm takes off and gets back to being an 80-point player. We kind of don't really think that's going to happen. Well, JT Miller is definitely that. He's done it. I think he has a 100-point season on his resume. Elias Pettersson is, I would say, a player I'm a little less impressed with overall, but he's still closer to a number one center than Elias Lindholm. So, those kind of players don't become available often. And when they do, there is usually some risk attached, right? Jack Eichel became available, but he was also having a neck surgery that had never been done on an NHL player. There was risk there. Paid off in spades for Vegas. So, the Bruins better be checking in and keeping tabs on the situation. And if one of them actually did become available and they have done their homework and are comfortable with it, or even if there is some risk, they're willing to take it, you got to try, because it literally could be years before a center of that caliber becomes available again.
Yeah, so JT Miller, for the record, has 304 points in his last 265 NHL regular season games dating back to the beginning of the 2021-2022 season. The guy's legit. And look, obviously he's 31 years old. He wouldn't be the Bruins solution for the next decade. But my question is what would be the ask, right? If unfortunately for the Canucks, this is played out publicly, and when you know that when the whole world knows that there's friction in the room, beggars can't be choosers. How many teams out there have the financial room for a number one center? How many of them have the roster space for number one center? The Bruins are one of few playoff hopeful teams that like don't really have like an ideal guy in that position. So could the Bruins? Could you package, like a Trent Frederick and, some non-first round picks just because Vancouver's, I don't see it, but
No,
I don't know.
It would cost a ton. Like,
So I was hearing out there though that, and look, I tend to agree with you, Scott. I think somebody's gonna have to give up a first at least, in a package, but
yeah, I would say first and probably significantly more.
But there are hockey analysts out there, and I forget who I was listening to, but that really do believe that the Canucks would be hamstrung. Like they would have to take what they can get. And in that situation, could a team, I don't want to say fleece them, but yeah, kind of fleece them.
Yeah, I mean, like it's nice to think that, and obviously if that were to come to fruition, then great. But like and I'm not saying like it's a direct comparison, but I'll go back to like the big Matthew Tkachuk trade where Calgary was hamstrung. Everyone knew Matthew Tkachuk was not re-signing there, so they had to trade him at some point. And they still got a 100-point score in Jonathan Huberdeau and a top 4 defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar. Like that, I know Florida won that trade very clearly, but like Calgary still got like a pretty damn good package in return, even with being hamstrung.
Yeah, and the Kreider stuff like is probably more of a reasonable ask for what the Bruins have and what they're willing to give up. And also the Rangers are just kind of a dumpster fire. So I feel like they're kind of making stupid decisions already all over. Like I don't know necessarily what the philosophy is over there because it's been much like things have gotten worse than I thought they were going to. I think fans are really not happy. I mean, they're even firing like people in marketing and social media, and like I don't even know what's completely going on there, but seems like maybe there's a deal to be had there because they didn't get a good return for Kakko. They trade their captain like Trouba. It didn't, for trading your captain, you didn't get a lot for that, but like I don't know. There might be a more reasonable deal to be made for Kreider. He's a little bit older, but
yeah, well, there is, but like they're just two completely different conversations. Like
yeah, they are. Yeah,
Kreider is a short-term addition on the wing for an older player getting towards the end of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Miller or Pedersen is like number one center guy that you're going to plug in. In Miller's case, for at least several more years. Pedersen would be even longer term than that. Like those are they're just like two whole different levels.
And I think there's reason to believe that both are gone. Like I think it's more likely that Miller stays in Vancouver than Kreider stays in New York. But there is some serious belief out there that, again, because JT Miller was out of the lineup for some time for personal reasons, and Elias Pettersson was playing some of the best hockey he's played in years. Miller comes back to the lineup, and they both kind of go scoreless in their last 5-6 games, and there's a lot of belief out there in Canucks land and the hockey landscape in general that the Canucks, this is going to have to be something that they address at some point this year, that it's inevitable, and certainly after this year that something would happen. So I do think if they move somebody, it would be Miller. And I do think there's a strong chance he's gone at some point this year, especially if things go south for them. I don't think it would be the Bruins, but I do think him being on a different team is a very real possibility. I think Kreider's as good as gone, but Miller is very intriguing to me.
Yeah, and the Bruins have been interested in him before. Like they've been linked to him in the past. I think, you look at like this was, I think there'd been rumors like he might be available kind of going back to like just before Bo Horvat ended up being available, and Bruins were interested in both of those guys. How serious they got, I don't know, but yeah, like they've they've been down that path before. He's been on their radar.
And he's under contract, for the record, through the 2029-2030 season in Vancouver. So there is that too. Like if you're gonna trade for him and you have term, then you better give the Canucks something worth their while. So it's just worth bringing up. It's going to be an interesting story to follow. If you're not familiar with this storyline, keep an eye on it, because if it's not the Bruins, which low chances of that, but I think it could be somebody that could be getting a bona fide stud on their team at some point this year. So and the Kreider thing, yeah, I think there's a chance he goes somewhere very soon. Don't know where it is. Depending on the ask, Boston would be nice, but we've talked about that before.
And the last thing I would say on Miller, like, you might not love the term. Again, what did you say? He was 31 years old and locked up through 2030. Like, you might not love that, but his cap hit's $8 million for a number one center. Like, that's a bargain, really. Like, if we're gonna be real about it, like, you're not signing a player of JT Miller's caliber for $8 million ever again. So
maybe
I was gonna say, it's just the likelihood for reasons that you're mentioning, like with the caliber, like the likelihood is very different because the ask for each player would be very different. So
well, it's almost 1 a.m. So maybe if this becomes more of a story in the future, we can have a discussion about what you guys would be willing to give up if you're the Bruins, because obviously I think it would start with a first round pick. But anyway, different conversation, different day. Bridget and Scott.
So
what's that?
So it's 1 a.m. So
yeah, it's true.
I can't do it right now.
No,
it's officially Christmas Eve day.
It is. So to all of our listeners, thank you all for listening, and have a Merry Christmas, Bridget and Scott, you guys as well. And we will be back after the holiday for some more Bruins analysis. Thank you all for listening. Hey guys, thanks for watching this Skate podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.